My name is Dr. Howard Lyon, Senior Chair of the History Department at New Haven College. I'm also the best-selling biographer of Christopher Columbus, America's first Italian. Due to circumstances beyond my control, I find myself with a lot of free time on my hands. So I've turned my biographical prowess to the fictional Cheers verse and written the definitive life story of Frasier Crane using only the data provided by Cheers, Wings, and 11 seasons of his titular sitcom. In our last episode, we covered the childhood years of Frasier Crane, from his birth in 1953 to the realization of his life's purpose in 1961. Other topics included the birth of Niles Crane, and several instances where I demonstrated that I am the most qualified person to handle this monumental project. When Frasier Crane was only 8 years old, he realized his ultimate destiny. Like his mother, he would heal people through the art and science of psychiatry. But there were other important aspects of his life he had yet to discover. And he found them during his high school days, from the fall of 1967 to the summer of 1971. Frasier attended Seattle's prestigious Bryce Academy, a preparatory school with an impressive legion of alumni. Frasier's class alone gave the world a heart transplant specialist, a cancer researcher, and a computer software magnate. Young Frasier was certainly up to the challenges Bryce had to offer. Before we get further into this, and I know we just started, I need to make something very clear. I made a decision. It wasn't easy, but it had to be done, and I did it. I have no regrets. You see, during the run of the show, Frasier and Niles talked about attending junior high, high school, and prep school. Now, I don't know where you are, dear listener, but I'm a born and raised New Englander, and the phrase prep school is interchangeable with high school here. They both cover the same grades, and I always thought that when they referenced high school and prep school on Frasier, they were interchangeable terms. Not so. In Liar, Liar, the 10th episode of the 4th season, it's revealed that prep school is different from high school. In fact, it comes before high school. But that's not junior high, because they also mentioned they went to junior high. So what is prep school? How could this make sense? After extensive research, it seems it is possible that Frasier and Niles went to all 3 schools in that order. But apart from that one mention in Liar, Liar, Frasier doesn't talk about his high school ever. He does, however, bring up Bryce Academy all the time. So, I made a decision. I am discarding a piece of true canon, and Bryce Academy Preparatory School is now Frasier's high school. It's just simpler that way, and don't think I'm taking the easy way out. I tossed and turned every night for weeks about this. You don't think this is eating me up inside? And while I can't get a decent night's sleep, these lazy TV writers who can't even keep Frasier's birthday straight go right on living with their fancy cars and their purebred dogs. How is that fair? Now, in many ways, life was very much the same for Frasier in high school, which again is the same as prep school, okay? He was a bookish sort and was still a target for bullies. His nickname during his freshman year was the Bryce Academy Crier, a cruel twist on the name of the high school newspaper. He made some attempts to remedy this, but he never fit in with the popular kids. His only friends were the nerds, students in the debate club, or that exchange student from Abu Dhabi. While he failed to become popular, he thrived in his studies. He took Spanish and learned the language fluently. He went on to serve as the Grand Pangendrum of the Vocabulary Club, the only elected office he would ever hold. He even began tutoring other students. But there was something very important around the corner, something beyond academic achievement. In 1967, Frasier caught the acting bug. At 14 years old, Frasier began a lifelong addiction to applause. His very first role on stage was Bottom in a production of Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. He received a standing ovation, and from that moment on, he wanted more. His role in The Dream led him to mount and direct his very own backyard production of Hamlet, where the star of the show was a skull Frasier stole from one of the Bryce Academy classrooms. Young Frasier also found an outlet in creative writing. Martin Crane, now a homicide detective, took his son mini-golfing to spend some quality time with him. For the trouble, Frasier wrote a short story about the experience that he published in the high school's literary magazine. It was called Through the Clown's Mouth Darkly, and it went on to take the silver medal in the All-City Fiction Contest in 1968. He also started writing a society column for his high school's newspaper, using the nom de plume Alistair Mowbray, demonstrating a love for the written word and a certain flair for the dramatic. 1968 had another important milestone for Frasier: his first kiss. It was with Jill Solomon in one of the science labs at the Bryce Academy. Jill was not thrilled about the experience, and in response, she hurt Frasier in such a way that he had to visit the nurse's office. This first misstep into romance would cast a shadow on the rest of Frasier's romantic life. My first kiss was around that age as well, but it went well for me. It went very well, very, very well. In fact, I've kissed hundreds of times since, thousands of times. How do I keep track? Well, I have a diary. But don't worry, ladies, I keep it in a safe place. Frasier would spend his entire high school career single, always interested in some young lady, but never able to seal the deal. He and Niles, who was similarly afflicted, would often tell themselves that women eventually choose men who are intelligent and sensitive. While that has been very true in my life, like I said, I've kissed millions of lips, and many women desire me in a romantic and sexual way, this theory was never proven true while Frasier was at Bryce. In fact, his sexual frustrations became so unbearable that in order to distract himself, he constructed a replica submarine big enough to sleep 6 over the course of 6 months. He would often play pretend in it, shouting, "Fire 1, Fire 2. Pathetic. During Frasier's senior year, his brother Niles enrolled at Bryce Academy, and their rivalry spilled into the sacred halls of the school. In one memorable incident, Frasier received a standing ovation for his role as Conrad in Bye Bye Birdie. One student did not enjoy the performance, writing in the Bryce Academy Crier that Mr. Crane's attempts to gyrate his hips as Conrad the teen idol in Bye Bye Birdie made this reviewer say, "Bye Bye Breakfast." Bye Bye Breakfast, that's pretty good. That reviewer was Niles. Still, the two enjoyed their year at school together. Frasier wrote a musical to be performed by the other students and made sure that Niles had a good part. They even collaborated on the spring musicale, writing cheeky songs that somehow got past the eagle ears of teachers and faculty. I've always admired people who are creative. I write biographies, nice and clean, just the facts, nothing fancy. I tried to paint once, but all I put on the canvas was red. Deep, angry red. Just swabbing and swabbing away with the brush. The instructor even called 911, and all I could do was laugh and cry and paint. Red. 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 As he wrapped up his time at Bryce, Frasier continued to thrive academically. His extracurriculars were exemplary. In addition to theater, he also joined the Existentialist Club, where he was named Most Likely to Be. and in 1971 he graduated second in his class. Much of this academic success could be attributed to his younger brother. Frasier made sure to push himself out of fear that he'd be bested by brainy little Niles. Before he could leave prep school behind, he had to endure one last humiliation. On prom night, Frasier and his date arrived at the dance in a horse-drawn carriage. His date was Niles. The quote-unquote official story was that both of their dates canceled at the last minute and they decided to go stag together. A likely story. This was the cherry on top of a lonesome 4 years at Bryce. Deep feelings of inferiority started to bubble up inside of Frasier during high school, and showing up to the prom with his little brother probably didn't help. I did not attend my prom, as I was busy with court-ordered anger management classes. If you're wondering, can a 17-year-old be ordered into anger management class? The answer is yes. If they assaulted a rival volleyball team's mascot with loose bricks. In the fall, Frasier would be attending Harvard, a prestigious university. Although, working in academia myself, I can vouch that the Ivies are more a social club. There's nothing wrong with a state school, or a city school like New Haven College. Nothing wrong with that. At Harvard, young Frasier would be challenged academically and have many opportunities to pursue theater. But in those short months between high school and college, Frasier's life would be upended. Firstly, as Frasier was preparing to leave home, there was suddenly no home to leave. After renting their house for 10 years, the owners of the property, a Mr. and Mrs. Laskoff, asked the Crane family to vacate. This must have made a difficult milestone even more troubling, as the Crane family had to rush and find a new place to live. To pour salt in the wound, Mr. Laskoff didn't even return the security deposit to Marty, a model tenant. Secondly, there was one more rite of passage Frasier went through before going to college. That summer, Frasier lost his virginity. After 4 years of unwanted chastity, he began an illicit affair with an older woman, his piano teacher, Miss Clarice Warner. During their brief romance, the two truly began to care about each other. On their last evening together, they found themselves stuck in a summer storm. They walked through the rain, the thunder, the lightning. Frasier kissed the raindrops from Clarice's nose and promised they'd always be together. That, of course, did not end up happening. Later that night, while Clarice lay sleeping, Frasier left a rose on her pillow, never truly saying goodbye. Many years later, Frasier relayed this story to some drinking buddies in Boston. One of them, Thomas J. Fallow, would turn it into a best-selling romance novel, Slow Tango, in South Seattle. Despite striking out in the romance department as a teen, Frasier's love story would set the hearts of millions of women on fire a few decades later. As this chapter of Frasier's life comes to a close, so too does this episode. I do want to briefly mention that as a biographer, it is my sacred duty to focus on my subject. This is the story of Frasier W. Crane. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that during these years, 1967 through 1971, many incredible events happened to other members of the Crane family. Niles became a spelling bee phenom. Hester had an affair with a neighbor named Daniel Lawler. And in 1968, Marty got his iconic chair. My notes are impeccable and extensive and will be available for you to peruse at your leisure. Enjoy! You better enjoy. Do you know how hard I worked on this? Next time we meet, we will spend time with Frasier Crane, undergraduate, graduate student, medical student. I look forward to exploring the rich world of the Crane family further with you. This is Dr. Howard Lyon, and that's a wrap on this episode of The Frasier Files.
Thank you for listening to the Frasier Files. The Frasier Files was researched, written, and performed by Stephen Winchell and developed for audio by Stephen Winchell and Ian Abramson. Directed by Lara Unnerstall, with audio recording and production by Adam Goron. Music by Stephen Winchell and Takuya Yoshida. If you enjoyed our program, please rate and review us on your podcatcher of choice. You can find us on social media at Frasier Files, on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and Blue Sky. You can also send us an email at FrasierFilesPod@gmail.com. Thank you again for exploring the rich world of Frasier Crane with us.